empty the chamber on them. And how do you do that? 4 to 6 seconds, point A to point B, everything you got. Everything you got. Turn that shit up. Let's go. Welcome to the Scoop World Order Transfer Portal Madness Edition. We have got a major player who has just hit the portal in Jordan Addison, the reigning Blitnikoff winner from the Pitt Panthers. Shocking development. It's going to be one of those things that could send shockwaves throughout college football. We're going to get right into that because we're going to be talking about this one for a while because this is a big deal. It's probably bigger than most people realize. But first off, again, thank you guys. Our last video went bonkers because of you guys. So please like the content. You guys that aren't subscribed, please subscribe. It's unbelievable how much of an impact you guys have directly on this video. Comment on who you wish we could go get in the portal. Should we be more aggressive in the portal? It's just there's just so many things to talk about with this portal news and with NIL and the one-time transfer rule. It's like it's amazing all this happened just at once. But thank you so much for your support. The likes really help supercharge the video and we move up the algorithm and we ride that wave to a really nice day. So thank you so much. You guys are the best. So I'm gonna bring in Nevadabuck. Nevada, how are you tonight?
Doing great. Lots going on, man. This NIL portal stuff is madness, and the news today in Addison is just more madness for the fire.
Yeah, it's interesting. We started. We obviously we're on BuckeyeScoop.com, and getting into the message board game has never been more crazy than right now because there really aren't as many lulls and breaks as there used to be. There used to be like a lull between spring ball and summer camp, or like the recruiting camps and then recruiting camps and fall camp. And now with the transfer portal and NIL, there's never really a downtime, is there? I mean, can you ever agree? Can you agree? There's not. I mean, the craziness just never stops.
Yeah, well, you're always watching them. You always have to be kind of aware of situations that could happen. Good things that can happen for your team, bad things that can happen for your team, and just got to stay on top of it. So it's news is always breaking. That's for sure.
Yeah, we're gonna jump right into it. So Jordan Addison, the reigning Blitnikoff winner. The Blitnikoff is for the #1 receiver. He beat out Jamison Williams, who I thought should have won the award last year. He beat him out. 100 catches, 1,400 yards, basically an NFL Pro Bowl type season in 14 games. So super efficient. He's Kenny Pickett's #1 guy, returning player, and decided to hit the portal. And if you look at the kind of the bones around the situation, he lost his first round quarterback. He lost his offensive coordinator. And he's like, I'm going to go do what's best for me, and I'm going to go find a good quarterback and a good coach. And, there were rumblings over the weekend with Pat Narduzzi reaching out to Lincoln Riley about possible tampering. But I don't know how you can, say that a coach is tampering, because I'm sure that a coach isn't dumb enough to contact the player directly. But, these players, they're all friends. They're all Instagram buddies. It's not real hard for guys to reach out to each other and say, hey, we should team up and do the super team thing. And, and then you have NIL collectives that reach out to these guys, and it's completely unregulated. It's pretty insane. So Nevada, what was your initial reaction when you saw that the reigning wide receiver of the year and potential first round pick hit the transfer portal?
Well, I just thought it was something that we had long predicted that this was going to happen. This was going to happen with existing players. It was going to happen with where guys come, not from Kent State or not from Alcorn State, but from big established programs and kind of move. And, obviously as an Ohio State fan, you're always, you're interested in terms of how that could, benefit Ohio State, but it could also cut the other way and, players could leave. So I'm, this news was shocking, but not surprising to me. And I think we're going to see more and more of this stuff. And NCAA, the Power 5 schools, the big conference, they've got to get a handle on this because it's out of control. And I think it's bad for college football. If that's an unpopular opinion with people, that's fine. I don't care. It's not great for the game that we've all known and loved to have unlimited free agency for these players at all time. It's going to be it's going to wreak havoc on depth charts. I think kids are going to make decisions for all the wrong reasons. And I think the game is being fundamentally changed right before our eyes. And I'm concerned about it. I've been sounding the alarm, been talking about a lot about it. But I think this is going to have a profound impact on college football and not in a positive way.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like to a much stronger degree, like the one and done rule for college basketball. Like the purpose of it was so you couldn't have kids go from high school straight to the pros. But the one and done rule has destroyed college basketball. It's destroyed programs like Kentucky that they want to recruit all these 5-star one and done kids, and then it just destroys their culture. They have no culture basically. They have no structure, no leadership. The kids take a semester of classes that are all like joke type classes, and then they go to the NFL, and it's kind of ruined a lot of these kids because they don't they don't play for their colors, they don't play for their team, they don't there is really no chemistry, and with how this works, I mean I could imagine if I was an offensive lineman and like Ted Ginn left like out of the blue, yeah, it's just like you're like boys, like we were 1 year apart in recruiting class, but we were together for 3 years, and it's just devastating to your team. I mean, it's hard when these guys, you can always kind of project who's going to go in the NFL draft. Like I knew when Anthony Gonzalez was leaving. I knew in the middle of the '06 season he was out. I knew Teddy was out. Obviously, Teddy was a guy, everyone knew he was gone. But when a kid like this, who you're a coach and he's a foundational piece and he's one of the best players in the history of the program, and he just decides to up and leave because he could test the market. It was stunning. We're gonna move into the possible destinations here are really intriguing. Nevada, where do you think he ends up, and are there any dark horse teams? Because right now, like I mean, we talked about this in pre-show, but kind of lay out where you think he could end up and potential dark horses for this.
Well, I mean, obviously the chalk is USC. I mean, USC. The NIL people talk about the NIL presentation for USC and how they went out and they got Hollywood producers to go and make this really slick presentation at NIL, but it really just comes down to money. USC has gone out and raised, and as part of their NIL collective, around $60 million, and they raised that in a little bit over 10 days because their uh, alumni base is just so affluent, so willing to spend money, and they're basically going out and offering huge contracts to guys to come. And for a player like Addison, I'm hearing the numbers are around $5 million. And so, you know, I think when you've got a guy like that that's kind of hunting for money, looking for it, could possibly happen. After that, Alabama. After that, LSU. Texas A&M, Texas, any of the big schools. The schools. We're not talking about schools like Ohio State or Michigan or Notre Dame or any of the traditional schools that are a little bit more stodgy about this stuff. They're not in this game right now. They're playing a completely different game than these other college football powers are. Has it affected them yet? Not yet, but it's going to.
Yeah, I think that you nailed it. Obviously, USC's the favorite. Alabama makes a ton of sense because he's a 1 year rental, essentially, and he wants to go somewhere. From a development standpoint, Lincoln Riley's put a lot of really good receivers into the first round. CeeDee Lamb, Hollywood Brown. We actually talked about it last show, and then obviously Nick Saban as a returning Heisman winner. I'm sure that Ohio State, if we weren't incredibly deep at the wide receiver spot, would be in the conversation, but we're not. But again, like you never know. Like if some school comes strong with an offer, and then all of a sudden he ends up, at a Texas A&M or a Texas, because that's what can happen. I mean, Texas has got Quinn Ewers, you got pretty sizable deal to go to Texas, and if you're looking for a shiny new toy in a first round wide receiver, it's like why would you not at least try to get in touch with him and try to get in touch with his people and make a pitch and say, look, you come to Texas for 1 year, you're going to be set for life. So that's, I obviously, everyone, pretty much considers USC a lock, but, nowadays, I don't think anything's a lock because guys can leave the roster instantly. Players they're not loyal. And if they can get a huge bag of money to play their last season, then why wouldn't you? I mean, and like the USC thing, it's kind of like when OJ Mayo had to play 1 year before he went pro, and he went out to USC just out of the blue, like called them and said, "Hey, I'd love to come." He was the number one player in the country, and hey, I'd love to go to USC for a year. And of course, he riddled them with all kinds of sanctions and all kinds of that kind of thing. But it's kind of what it's like now. These kids, I think, if they can get 1 year and they can go out to LA, and LA's kind of cool now because the Rams just won the Super Bowl. I mean, LA's always been cool, but it's like Lincoln Riley being out there makes it a lot cooler than Clay Helton, and they get that tremendous sophomore quarterback from Oklahoma. So it's going to be fascinating. So. New normal for college football. It's funny. This is a little out of date because I googled like power boosters or super boosters or whatever you want to call it for college football. And this image is obviously is a little old with Papa John and Les Wexner, and yeah, but you see Phil Knight, you see some of the T Boone Pickens, you see some of the guys that have traditionally helped run these things. Is this going to be the new normal when you see these sophomores that are coming back as true juniors that don't have draft eligibility to potentially hit the portal?
I think it is. I think it's absolutely going to be. And I like to think about it like think back in the NFL. The NFL for years and years and years, players were drafted by their team and played with their teams, and then all of a sudden Reggie White challenged free agency, changed, went to the Packers, huge deal. And what happened after that? Now the NFL's never been the same in terms of the free agent market, and I think we're seeing the same thing in college football. This is the opening salvo of the big free agent market in college football. And we've seen it happen with recruits. We've seen it happen with with transfers from smaller schools. Now you're going to see it start happening with transfers from larger schools. And these NIL collectives are the new power brokers of what's going on. And what's interestingly is that for these NIL deals, the least valuable players right now are existing players. The money's
Yep.
going to the new recruits. But so it's interesting that the whole thing that this was set up to help the existing players that are playing at Ohio State and getting the car deal or getting the you know Mrs. Fields cookies deal or whatever it was. That's not what it's being used for, and those are the last people that are benefiting. The people that are going after the new kids, the shiny new toys, the new recruits, and I think that is the new normal for college football. I think today I cannot emphasize enough about how big this is and the impact that this is going to have. I think the impact on college football is going to be felt for years, and I think the NCAA is powerless to stop this. It can only be stopped by the schools if they want to stop it. And I just don't know if there's enough of a consensus, enough of a form, and a strong leader. You need a Delaney or some type of a strong leader to step in and stop the madness right now because it's out of control.
Yeah, and I think that it'll really breed disloyalty between the players, or if you want to go from the player side, chasing their fair market value per se. And I think that it's going to, it's just going to amplify the kind of the back alley dealings that happen in college football, where you've got collectives reaching out to the handlers and, hey, what's the figure if my guy goes to Oklahoma or LSU or A&M, Texas. Like, I mean, I've done podcasts with both of the collectives that are for Ohio State, and it's a major concern. If there's one thing that keeps Ryan Day up at night, it's this. It's NIL, it's transfers. Because again, like he's got two of the top players. I mean, you could have five guys, leave Ohio State and all make better deals than this kid. I mean, I think that obviously Jackson Smith and Jigba, C.J. Stroud. I mean, if they ever decided, hey, we're gonna go as a package deal somewhere, and like, you look at Georgia or you look at I mean, obviously Bama doesn't fit with the quarterback coming back, but I mean, it just it's like these NFL guys that they want to like what Terrell Owens wanted to like redo his contract like every single year, I mean, or these guys hit their third year of their rookie deals and they're ready to redo and get the big number, and Kyler Murray's like, hey, I need to get paid, and there's this whole thing, and like I mean, you can't always blame them just because this is what it is. And like when you see your Kyler Murray and you see Deshaun Watson get $230 million fully guaranteed, like you think that maybe I should do that. Maybe I should sit out. Maybe I should cause a fuss because in football, like especially in the professional ranks, like I mean, generally loyalty doesn't get rewarded. Greed does. If you go, if some of these guys could hit the market every year, they would just because they get to cash in with a fresh new signing bonus. And I think that's kind of where we're at. And I think it's absolutely terrible for college football because you're going to have these kids that have been working hard to gain roles and they're going to lose them to some kid that walks on because some collective paid him. There's some kids probably think he's going to be the number one wide receiver at USC and all of a sudden he gets bumped down to 2, or what's worse is the guy that gets bumped down from like 3 to 4, because if they run 3 wide receivers and then all of a sudden you become number 4 and you're the guy who's watching instead of on the field in the slot, it's a big blow. And I don't know, but it's going to be really interesting to see how recruiting works with this when you tell some kid, some 5-star, hey, you're our quarterback, and then all of a sudden you buy another quarterback with a collective, and then I thought I was your guy. It's there's a lot of interesting conversations that are going to be going on with this. So the OSU Impact, I got a picture of my boy Quinn, who Quinn's the most prominent NIL person maybe ever at this point, just because he left high school, made a boatload of money, went to Texas, made a Titanic full of money, and now it's there's just people that are figuring out how much money they can make, and CJ Stroud's got over $1 million in the bank now, which is incredible. Given his age and how young he is, and he sat in a suite at the Super Bowl, and I mean these kids, they do so much stuff now that back in the day it was you'd have compliance all over you, and you'd have people asking questions, taking photos, but now it's like the new normal. So what are the impacts for Ohio State, Nevada? We ask this all the time. Is this good for Ohio State, bad for Ohio State? Can we compete in this new arena? But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think first of all, people have to understand there's multi layers to this. The first layer of complexity are the regulations that exist, and I'm talking about like state regulations regarding how the collectives work. And right now in the state of Ohio, the collectives are prohibited from reaching out to recruits, and they're only designed to kind of help out existing players on the team. Now, a state like Tennessee just recently changed it where the collectives can work directly with the school to go out and recruit players. So who's going to have a bigger advantage there? Tennessee, where they can work hand in glove with their collective, where they're saying, "Hey, go out to this guy and offer him this amount of money and try to bring him in here," or in Ohio, where it's limited to existing players. So I think there's a legislative effort that needs to go on. I'm confident that those conversations are happening and that will happen. And the second thing's going to have to be, though, is that they're going to have to raise a ton of money, and they're going to have to go out and deploy the money operationally in an aggressive, kind of a weaponized fashion, to not view NIL just through the lens of you're trying to reward current players, but how to go out and recruit players. I'm a little concerned about the fact that they've got two collectives right now, so the efforts are somewhat diluted between the collectives. They're not coordinating, um, and I think that they've really got to get professional people, and they're running these collectives, so it just can't be a hobby for somebody in terms of doing this. This is a serious business that needs to be handled in a serious manner, and I think for Ohio State right now, I think they're moving in the right direction. They're saying the right things. They're trying to do the right things. But I'm just telling you from firsthand experience of watching other big schools, USC, Georgia, Alabama, Texas A&M, we are not in their league right now. We're just not. And we've got to get our stuff straight. We've got to raise the money. We've got to go at this in a much more concentrated fashion. Otherwise, we do risk falling behind. I mean, are we going to fall behind this year? Are we going to all of a sudden fall out of the top 10 and become irrelevant? No, that's not going to happen. But it never happens overnight. It's always a slow ebb when you start moving from the top tier to, say, a medium tier. It never happens overnight for schools. And I think for Ohio State, um, they've really got to really got to put, this is the biggest threat to Ohio State's place in college football royalty as we've ever faced, and Ohio State needs to deal with it with that level of seriousness.
Well, I agree. I mean, for me, it's it's just interesting because we've been sounding the alarm, and the hardest part for me with the collectives is that if you're really going to do this, you got to raise big time money in these collectives. Now, do we have? I mean, obviously we have plenty of people at Ohio State that have money, but it's one thing to have money, and it's another thing to be excited to give to a collective that is essentially going to be buying players. So, do we have that? Because when you give to the collective, what do you get out of it? That's the thing that I haven't been able to figure out is what do you get? So I write a check for $1 million, $5 million, whatever it is, whatever some of our super donors could just write, out of their back pocket. What do they get? Ohio State gives you they'll name a building after you. You can get a suite. You can get tickets or. But with the collective, I still don't know what I get if I write a check. And that's a problem. And are there enough people that understand that? Look, this isn't an ROI thing. This is a Ohio State being competitive? Are there people that love Ohio State football and athletics enough to write a check and literally just, make Ohio State richer? Because that's the thing that, there's no correlation to if I give X amount of dollars to this, that Ohio State gives me these perks or whatever. So that's like the thing that I have a question about in terms of raising cash. But for some schools, they just don't care because the thing I worry about with Ohio State is I think that our appetite for greatness is satiated and we're not hungry. So the guys are, they're like, oh, we're going to the playoffs every other year and we're winning the Big Ten every year. But is that enough to really, really put us over the top and really help us beat, the Alabamas and the Georgias? Because those schools, they're, winning titles and they are absolutely taking advantage of this. And I don't think we are, and when you got schools like A&M and USC, I mean, those are going to be formidable foes, with their coach, with their head coaches, with how aggressive they are, with the amount of money they can raise. And I don't know. Like, I haven't felt that, oh man, look out for that Ohio State collective, the way that, there's an article that came out today that specifically mentioned Texas and Texas A&M. They're like, how much is oil a barrel right now? $100. So, yeah, those guys they're printing money right now. And that's why, like, if someone like A&M showed up or Texas showed up and they got the Addison kid, it wouldn't surprise them at all because they could offer him a boatload of money and for 8 months to go live in Austin, Texas. I mean, there's worse things you could do in your life. But to close this out, is there what needs to happen for Ohio State to gain an edge? Because me and you, we rail a lot on how the SEC and specifically Alabama, Alabama kind of lifted the SEC the way that Ohio State lifted the Big Ten when Urban showed up in 2012. But you mentioned the Tennessee rule and how they can work hand in hand with the collective. Like those are just all those little nuances that people don't think add up together, that the SEC is progressive on that we usually aren't. Spring football, roster management, how they have a gray shirt and medical kids that weren't really hurt and that type of thing. And then the collective thing, I can't imagine that won't pass in every Southern state within the next month, where, because Alabama's not going to let Tennessee have an advantage over them. That's probably on the state house floor right now. But what does Ohio State and maybe even the state of Ohio need to do to get this ratcheted up to the point where we are competitive with these schools in the NIL game?
Well, I think let's talk about a little bit about our challenges. Our challenges are we don't have a booster culture like they have down in Alabama, where they're used to doing this type of stuff. We don't have a look at me type of culture like you have at USC, where you've kind of got that Lakers sitting courtside. My seats cost $125,000 a seat, and I'm ostentatious with my wealth. Ohio doesn't have either one of those things going for them, and those are two prime drivers. Yes, what's the motivator of people giving money to these collectives? It's either bragging rights and humble brag fame, or just because you're used to doing this as a booster. And like I said, I think those two things are working against Ohio State. I think for Ohio State to get into this game, what they really need, ideally, what they'd have is they'd have a their T Boone Pickens. They'd have a mega wealthy person step in and run these collectives, or head these collectives, and not the relative of somebody, or not somebody who knows somebody, or not Tony Nicholas, or not Phil Griffin. They'd have Jack Nicholas. They'd have somebody who's prominent, who's going to attack this at the highest levels and with the most seriousness necessary, and deploy all the resources of Ohio State towards something like this. I think it's the only way. I think Ohio State's nibbling around the edges right now, and they have to go all in. And it's a real concern for me, because I look at, if I'm a college coach like a Ryan Day, I don't know if I signed up for this, because this NIL stuff is a completely different world. And you want to talk about Ohio State being the graveyard of coaches? Well, start waving a $12 or $15 million NFL job at somebody like a Ryan Day, who's a passing game savant, and he's going to what's going to drive more coaches out of the game is going to be having to deal with this, because they didn't sign up for this, and I think Ohio State's got to realize that as well. So I think it's a multi-front war. They have to identify it as such. They've got to put the resources. They have to have serious people behind it. Otherwise, I think there's a genuine risk of getting left behind.
Yeah, again, every day the NFL looks more attractive to me. If I'm one of these coaches, I mean, the NFL, at least, the guys, you can cut guys, but they can't just walk off your team like they're doing in college. And it just, it's, again, I enjoy Ryan every day that he's here. I don't know how long he's going to be here. You know what I mean? Because again, I think I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think he's that good. And I think that, when a guy is an offensive genius, that's what people want in the NFL right now, man. And I just, you go to the NFL and I mean, the lifestyle is a million times better. There's no recruiting now. Now, like, I mean, it was bad enough with the recruiting, but now you throw in the portal, NIL deals. These kids that are, making significant money at an even younger age. And I mean, obviously, NFL, they have 20-year-olds that are millionaires, but you got 18-year-olds here that are going to be millionaires. And it's like, they're on a college campus, and it is a wild, wild time right now. And to me, I just don't know. I mean, obviously, I think it has to get regulated. I think they're probably going to put in specific windows for the portal. They'll probably do one, at the end of spring and one at the end of the season. But, something we didn't talk about is how, a lot of these kids, they quit on their teams in the middle of the season. And that's something I don't think I've ever even brought up. But, a lot of these kids know that they can still have a redshirt year if they, just the fact that these guys can, they can play 4 games and still redshirt. And that's why, Kayvon Pope, took his shoulder pads off and marched off the field last year. I mean, it's all within the first 4 games. So a lot of these kids, they quit in the middle of the season to maintain maybe their final year of eligibility or that extra year of eligibility. Because if they play in a 5th game, they lose that year of eligibility. So I don't think people realize that nuance to it. So you see these kids that just leave the team in the middle of the year after 4 games because they want to have that extra year of eligibility at their transfer spot. Like for Kayvon, if he plays in a 5th game, he's a graduated senior and he's exhausted his eligibility. So he's at Tennessee State or wherever with Eddie George, but the amount of kids that quit the team in the middle of the season now just so they can keep that extra year is it's startling, and really it's selfish, but that's the culture that we have now. So it's really interesting. I'm telling you, this is going to be it's going to be interesting to see how this gets regulated. It has to get regulated somehow. It's going to be interesting to see where Jordan Addison lands because, if he goes to Alabama, it's like, my God, they just got, they had JMO last year. They got this kid. They got the running back from Georgia Tech. But I think, SC makes total sense. And, again, it'll be interesting to see how big of a power player SC becomes because, these kids, they love fame. They love building their brands, and there's no better place to do that than Los Angeles. So, yeah, it's going to be fascinating. So you got any closing thoughts on this one, Nevada? We're almost at 30 minutes. We didn't think we'd go that long, but with this, there's so many layers that you kind of unravel as you start talking about it. But you got any closing thoughts on this one tonight?
No, like I said, I just hope I hope and I'm confident that Ohio State is going to deal with this with the seriousness that they need to, because this is a profound threat to our place in the college football landscape. And while we've had some success in hey, we got a Jonah Jackson or we got a Justin Fields or we got one guy here nibbling here. I mean, USC's adding 15 guys this year through the portal, so it's like we have got to look at this in a different way. And I'm cautiously optimistic that Ohio State will do it. I think the two collectives are a step in the right direction, but I think those guys have got to get it together. They've got to focus the efforts. And like I said, I hope Ohio State's listening because this is a real threat.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, it's going to be the collective thing. It's just real interesting because you really have to have a guy who is an ardent supporter of Ohio State football, and they don't, obviously, we talk about return on investment, not in a monetary form, but like, genuinely, like my biggest question for the collectives is like, I'm giving you my money. What do I get? And I don't need like a, an investment return or whatever, but like, do I get, what do I get? I get to go watch practice. I get to talk to Ryan Day. Like, what do I get? And that's kind of the interesting thing, because like if you're a super donor at Ohio State, you know, you could go out to dinner with Ryan Day, you go golf with Ryan Day, fly around on the jet with the athletic director, you know, go to away games, like that kind of thing. But like, if you give the same amount of money to the collective, like, what do you get? You know, that's like the biggest thing that I'm curious about. And you know, if you're, you know, like I said, I think you hit the nail on the head when, you know, in reality, you probably just need a mega donor to start the collective and throw in a chunk of his money and go from there. But it's you know, for some of these guys, like the Miami Hurricanes guy, I mean, he's worth $3.5 billion. So it's like he could throw in 10 million and he's not really going to miss it. But you know, for others that, you know, I don't know if we have that guy anymore. I mean, Les Wexter, I mean, I haven't been to a limited store in a while and they're all out of business. So it's, you know, I don't know if guys are as excited about Ohio State football as some of these other schools, like I said, that are trying to get to where Ohio State is. Like the U hasn't been relevant in 15 years, and you know, so they're trying everything to get relevant. And I don't know if we have that same hunger as the schools that haven't been on top of the mountain. Well, with that, I'm gonna wrap this thing up. Appreciate you, Nevada, as always. We we're going crazy on Buckeye Scoop, man. I mean, like I said, every day there's new stories breaking. We love the content that we're producing. It's been fantastic. We appreciate you guys. Leave us a like. And I always, please, you know, just give us your comments. What do you think? What does Ohio State need to do? Write it. I read every comment you guys write. Appreciate you guys. You know, again, if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving us a like. Yeah, but we need you, Buckeye Nation, more than ever. Join BuckeyeScoop.com. You know, when we wrap these videos, we go straight to the board. We're talking about it all night. The board's incredibly active. We have an amazing community. So consider joining BuckeyeScoop.com. We are the leader in Buckeye sports athletics coverage, and appreciate everything you guys do. So with that, thank you, Scoop family. You guys are the best. Thank you, Buckeye Nation. You guys have a great rest of your day. Go Bucks.